Hi folks, welcome back to the channel, and most importantly, a massive Merry Christmas to everyone. Hope you're all enjoying the festive season. It's been a while since I've been on YouTube. For those who don't follow my channel, I used to make content every couple of weeks, but then my house flooded, so I had no space or time to kind of make videos anymore. But hoping in the new year to get back on it. But for now, I just wanted to get something out for Christmas to say a massive thank you to everyone who's remained subscribed to the channel, all the people who are new subscribers, people who have joined the Facebook group and contributed, who have bought me the virtual coffees and supported me. It's been really, really surprising the amount of support and the fact that it's kept going. I was always under the impression that as soon as you stop making content, the algorithm would be like, right, let's get rid of him. But it's been quite steady. The number of subscribers has never gone down. Still getting really nice comments and stuff like that. So this video, it might seem a bit of a rush and a bit random, but I just wanted to get it out to say thank you to everyone. But anyway, content to this video. What I'm going to be doing is using a mixture of digital processes and the c02 laser to emboss thin sheet metal. So the first half of this tutorial is going to be in Photoshop. And I hope that doesn't put anyone off, because I do all of my digital tutorials from an amateur standpoint. So I'm making sure that we're going through everything step by step and explaining everything along the way. And also, I'm pretty sure you can still get free month-long trials of Adobe products if you wanted to give Photoshop a go. So hopefully this isn't a kind of blocker that will turn anyone off. Second part of the tutorial is going to be more manual, going to get out into the shed with the laser and sort of go through the materials we'll be using and why I chose those specific materials. Anyway, enough waffling, let's crack on with it. Right, so this is the home screen of Photoshop. I've reset all of the defaults so that what you should be seeing on the screen is what you'll get if you download Photoshop and install it. So what I'm going to do now is I've got a file. I haven't prepared this file. This came straight off Google Images. It's just a medium res old school Sailor Jerry logo. So I'm just going to drag this into Photoshop. And you see I've got a load of sort of boxes and things that might be confusing to people who have never used this before. So let's start hiding some of this stuff. In your window panel, this is where you can access all of these menus. So anything at the moment with a tick by it is what's open. So let's just close everything. You see that's tidying that interface up a bit. It's a shame you can't just do it with one open box, but there you go. So, and even tools. So now you've just got your image open. One other thing I'm going to do, and you don't have to do this, it depends how you prefer working. I'm going to change my interface. So if I go to Edit, Preferences, Interface, and I'm going to change the colour of it, because I find working on a dark background with white text, it makes the sort of text appear a little bit blurry. So I prefer working on a kind of lighter interface. One other thing, and again, this is a personal preference. I don't like documents opening as tabs. That's basically up here. This first document's opened. If I open a second one, it's going to open here, and so on and so forth. I would rather they were all open in floating windows within my workspace and just find it a lot easier to work between documents like that. So open as tabs, and I'm going to turn this off as well. That means when you drag one document over the other, it's not going to dock with inside that. So, okay, so just to get that out of the tab. There it is. So our image and no tools. So I'm just going to get up the tools that we're going to be using in this video. So I'll go to Window, Layers, and Window, Tools. So your toolbar down the right hand side are the things that you kind of use to move, select, erase, paint on the image or paint on the layers. And the layers, well, I can show you now. So let's just go back to the toolbar. A lot of these, when you hover over them, they're going to show you what they do and give you a shortcut key. That means you can press that and it'll automatically go to that tool, which is it's really handy to get used to your shortcuts, because if you're working over here, to save you keep clicking over here and then go back and clicking, if you wanted a brush, you can press B. If you want your marquee, you can press M. And, so on and so forth. A lot of them are quite intuitive in the letter that's assigned to the tool, but some of them aren't. But like I say, you can see them by hovering over and it will give you the shortcut, in that sort of pop-out window. Also, every tool that's got a little arrow next to it means there's more than one tool within there. So, it's worth having a look at those as well. So if I go to my brush tool by pressing B, if, for example, I just paint all over this image, that's exactly what I've done. I can't do anything with what I've just done with that paint because it's the equivalent of just scribbling over an image on a piece of paper. If I just press Control and Z, that is undo, or you can go to Edit and Undo. That is where the layers come in. So down here, I've got this little plus icon. If I add a layer, you can see that's gone in here. And now if I paint all over this, I can turn off the visibility of that layer. I can move it around and do sort of various other things as well. So that's the point in layers. And really, I think this is the only thing we're going to be using today. So they're the only things I'm going to keep open. If you don't like these things docked in the side windows like they are here, with the tabs that are open, you can just drag them out. And again, I much prefer working in floating windows in a workspace like that. So I'm just going to drag all of these out of here. So I've got my layers palette where I can maneuver it whenever I need it. And my tools are docked in the left-hand side, and that's fine. Right, so getting started. This is the image that I'm going to use to emboss the sheet metal. And I'm only going to do a couple of things to this base image. Firstly, I'm going to check the size of it, because I've got this straight off Google and I haven't done anything to it. So this is saying 28 centimeters squared, 72 DPI resolution. Now, I normally work in 300 DPI workspace just as a habit of being a photographer, and the laser settings I have, because I've got a really fine focal length laser, I do that on a 300 DPI as well. I don't want to just change the resolution to 300 DPI because that doesn't give me any benefits other than hugely blowing up an image and pixelating it. So I just want to retain the pixel count on this. Now, you don't have to do this step. I'm just doing a bit of file prep here. So if I go to pixels, 805 by 821. So if I now change this to 300, you'll see how huge that would be and how much it's getting pixelated. So I'm just going to then retain the pixel count. So 805 by 821 pixels at 300 DPI. And that's, like I said, another personal preference. You don't have to do this. So one last thing with this image, because I need this file to be solid black and white, I just want to check that. And what you can do to check the tonal values of an image, you've got your color picker down here. So if I just click on this, while you're in this window, you can pick a color that will be applied to whatever brush you're using or paint bucket or anything like that. When you hover outside of this window, you'll see that this changes to a little eyedropper tool. And that eyedropper tool allows you to sample a color within the workspace. So if I click on here, you can see that is solid black. The RGB values, the hex code. And if I click out here, that looks solid white. So as I move around, nothing's changing. So I'm pretty happy that that is a solid black and white image. If you do the same thing and then find that you haven't got a solid black and white image, way to remedy that is, I'll show you the panel menu. Way to remedy that is to go to Image, Adjustments, Levels, or you can just press Control and L. And what this slider here is showing you is your shadows, your midtones, and your highlights. So you could just push the shadows a bit more and push the highlights, and that's going to just make sure that the blacks are black and the whites are white. So anyway, one last thing, I'm just going to make a negative copy of this image. So if I just press Actually, I'll show you the menu to get there. Image, adjustments, invert, or control and I. And the reason I'm going through the palette menus of doing this is because some laptops have pre-built shortcuts and they override Photoshop shortcuts. And I've found that before where I've got used to a workflow, change computers or something, go to use a shortcut and it just opens a sort of screen recorder within the laptop or something. So in this video, I'll do everything via its sort of panel menu. Right, and that's that. That's all I need to do with that. So for now. So I'm just going to save this, which is File, Save, or Control and S. And now start working on a second image. And what this second image is going to be the reverse of this with a few minor tweaks. So the reverse is inverted again. So go to Image, Adjustments, Invert. I'm going to mirror it. So I'm going to go to Image, Image Rotation, Flip Canvas Horizontal. And now what I'm going to do is add a kind of, what we could, in Photoshop it's called a stroke, to all of the black areas here. What a stroke is, if you can imagine, it's sort of running a line around everything that's black. So I'll show you how to do that. Now in this case, I'm going to use something called Magic Wand. And the Magic Wand selects colours as you click on them. So that is over here. You can press W to get to it, or you can go over here and it's in the sub menu of the toolbar. So just hold that, go down to Magic Wand. And I'm going to just click anywhere in the black. And you can see that has selected everything that's black. So if you want to select everything, there's a couple of ways of doing this. There's a long-winded way where you hold the Shift key and click on a few things. By the way, if you ever select something you don't want, you can go to Select and Deselect, or Control and D. But the easiest way of doing this is selecting one thing, and I'm going to go to Select, Similar. So now every single bit of black on this image is selected. So what I'm now going to do is, through the panel menu, this is Edit, Copy, Edit, Paste Special, Paste in Place. The shortcut for that is Control and J. So if I just undo that, and now I just press Control and J, you'll see that pops up in my window. So like I say, really, really beneficial getting used to the keyboard shortcuts. So what that's done is given me an exact copy of all of the black. But if I turn off the background, you can see this sort of checkerboard represents transparency. So I can now move this around. I'll just undo that so that's back in place. Turn the background back on. Now I want to put a stroke around all of this black. So I go to Layer, Layer Style, Stroke. Let's just move this so we can see what's going on. So this is saying it's putting a stroke around the inside, which I don't want. I want it around the outside. Just check the colour. That is black, which is what we want. And now as I move this slider for the size, you'll see that just grows. What I'm also noticing is the Magic Wand, the tolerance settings, obviously, which I didn't change, have brought in a very slight white fringe, which that's easily remedied within here as well. So let's just put the stroke down and I can show you how to fix that. I want to go to Color Overlay, and that means every pixel in this layer will be covered with a colour that you select. But with this we want it solid black. Just select, just go down to black and OK, and that means even those little fringe pixels that selection have brought in are now covered in black. So go to Stroke. So what I want to do here is picture, these are going to be two 3D parts that slot into each other. So I need to leave enough room for the original to kind of slot in here, but I also need to retain details so that the embossing looks proper. I think around there that looks about right. You can always turn the preview on and off to see what it looked like before and say, maybe could go a little bit less than that. You know, that is quite big. So let's go with 4 instead. Or maybe 3. Let's have a look. Nah, 4. All right. Okay. So now all I'm going to do is press OK. And if you have a look here in the layers palette, it's now giving you an extra sort of sub menu, and these are your layer effects that you've just applied. So if you ever wanted to go back to them, you just double click on them. So if you go back to your stroke, just double click on the stroke. That brings that back up so you can edit it. And if you wanted to hide them or individually, you can do that as well. So now all I want to do is flatten this image. And to do that, just go up here, and go to flatten image. That means that's now, there's no layers, no more editing. That is kind of finished. So I'm going to save this. So you can go Control-Shift-S or File, Save As. And I'm just going to save that one as 2. Right, so we've got our 2 templates. I now just want to combine them into one document very quickly, and then we can move on to the actual manual side of this. So, new document, Control and N, or File and New. It's in pixels, so I'm just going to change that to centimeters. It's in 300 dpi, which is how I want it. Now, this really just depends on how big you want this. So I'm thinking something like, I don't know, maybe 10 centimeters. So because I'm going to put these plates on one document, I'll go width 20 centimeters, height 10. Right, and you see now, just move these around. So I just need to reopen the first one that I saved. You can do that by just dragging it down, dragging it into Photoshop. Now, if you're kind of trying to drag and it's not working, if something else has happened, it means you've got the wrong tool selected. It wants to be this top tool here, which is the Move tool, or V on your keyboard. So I'm just going to grab this, drag it onto this document. You can see it showed up in my layers over this side, and you can now move that around. Close that down or minimize it if we don't need it. If you do like viewing things in a sort of tab form whilst working in this sort of way, you can also just go hover down here, and that brings up all of the files you've got open. So if you've got like multiple files open, it's nicer to just sort of flip between the two, and then you can click on the one you want to select. So I'm going to do the exact same thing with this copy as well. Now it's on there, you can see there are some sort of guides around it kind of lining up. They sort of flash up, so I don't want it quite bang next to it. And you can also hide the background so you can see exactly where they're sitting. Now this looks about right. I'm going to scale them up a tiny bit. To do that, if you hold Shift when you select your layers, you can see now that is both layers selected, so I can move them while they're grouped. Let's bring that up to the corner. Then I'll press either Control and T or go to Edit, Transform, Scale. And when you click this handle here, drag that down, that will scale that uniformly as well. You don't have to worry about holding Shift to retain the aspect ratio. If you're working within a window and you're getting this kind of thing where you can't quite see all of the document, a couple of options there. If you press Control and 0 or View Fit on Screen, that will fit the whole document to the size of the window that you're working in. If you want to just zoom in and out, Control and then the minus button next to the 0 on the keyboard, so that's zoom out, and then next to that is the plus button, that's zoom in. So I'm just going to hold that, drag that down here, that's all good. One last thing, I just want to put a stroke around the inverted version, because I will need to be able to see where I'm going to cut this out. So now I'll just click back on this layer, go to Layer, Style, Stroke. That'll be set as it was from before. Outside works fine for me. It doesn't need to be any particular size. It's just a guide for when I cut it. So that's fine. Go OK. I'm going to flatten that. Actually, I'll just move these a little bit more central. Flatten the image as before. Now it's asking me to discard hidden layers, and that's because I hid this background layer. Now you can click OK, or you can cancel and then show it and do the same, but it's gonna do the same thing. So go OK. That's flattened. That is now one image, no layers. It's not editable anymore, but that's exactly what we need. That's our template. So all I'm going to do now is go to File, Save As, or Control Shift and S. I'll just call this template. Save, and that's it. So let's jump out into the shed and get started on the manual stuff. Right, so if you haven't guessed already, what I'm going to be making is a kind of press that you put the sheet metal in between. So you'll have the side that's kind of raised, pressing into the sort of recessed areas. And then that's going to give you that lovely embossed sheet metal. Yeah. So I'm now just going to go through a few of the materials to determine which are going to be the best ones to use. So let's just move the camera down here. So I've got some woods here. Start with pine. Now, pine is really sort of common and easy to get, but it's not great for laser engraving. And the reason being is, although it's sort of called a softwood, in between the grain it's soft, but the grain of pine is really hard. So when your laser, which is running at a kind of uniform power, runs across it, it's not a uniform texture that it's encountering. So you're actually going to get like a sort of zigzag pattern a zigzag depth to your laser cut when you use pine. So it's really an all-round bad wood for laser engraving. Well, in my opinion, anyway. Oak, quite common, bit more expensive, and although it has got a grain, it is a really hard wood. The grain isn't a great deal harder than, well, what's in between it. So you will get, if you etch, say, for example, a big black square, it's not going to be perfectly smooth, but it's not going to be anywhere near as coarse and sort of zigzagged as the pine. So oak is a good one to use. It's also something, it keeps well. It'll be a lovely thing if you were going to keep this press for whatever reason. It's lovely to have things made out of nice material. So oak is a good choice of wood. Mahogany is equally as good. In fact, it might even be a bit better than oak, just because there's hardly any difference between the grain and what's in between it, because it's quite a fast growing wood, so you don't get that differentiation. But it's a fair bit cheaper. So if you go to like a sawmill and look for sapele, which is African mahogany, you can get it so much cheaper than oak. Yes, that's a really good wood to use. But my favourite is good old MDF. This is just, well, MDF stands for medium density fiberboard, so it's just a lot of mushed paper and fibres and stuff. But it is a completely uniform texture. So when you etch it with the laser, if you did that square, that's going to be, you're not going to get any sort of raised areas and stuff like that because there's no grain. It's also really hard. It doesn't warp unless you're going to leave it somewhere where there's a lot of moisture changes. So my choice is MDF. This is about 10 mil thick, and obviously it's just so much cheaper than wood. So yeah, that's what I'm going to go with. So let's just show you the settings on the laser. Right, got my MDF in the laser, so let's just fire it up. Right, just setting the depth. Those of you who've got a c02 laser, you just make these little things so that they fit in between the end of the lens and the surface you're going to be etching, and that gives you the perfect kind of depth so that you get the sharpest cut. One thing I will say, if you're ever sort of tempted to get one of these, but it seems like quite a complex thing that you have to get your head around, do not worry about that at all. These things are completely skillless. And I mean, if you can use a printer, you can use a laser. This isn't anything like a CNC router, which the software for a CNC is complex. The whole thing is you have to learn a lot to get some sort of very basic results out of a CNC. You can basically learn to get some brilliant results out of this in about 5 minutes. It's that simple. So anyway, let's just jump over into Lightburn and have a look at the settings. So I'm just going to open my file into Lightburn. Lightburn is a paid software that you can buy outright, but then if you wanted to update it every year, you pay a fee. But there's another free sort of variant of it, and it's called RD Works, and it's free to download. It's got more or less all of the same functionality as Lightburn. I choose to use Lightburn because it does a lot of calculations for you when it comes to etching cylindrical things, because I'm not very good at maths. So anyway, enough of that. What I've got is my image ready to be etched. I've got some presets down here, and I'm going to go with the oak preset that I set up. So I'll show you what that is now. Go into it. It is a speed of 350 millisecond, minimum power of 40, maximum power of 40, 300 dpi. And I'm probably going to do more than one pass, but I just want to do one first just to see how deep that goes. So that's okay. This is just your framing. So basically I've just set mine to the top right corner. So I just can do that, and then I can click frame, and that will just run the laser around the area that it's going to etch. It gives you a sort of preview so that you don't end up overrunning or undershooting with any of it. And that is pretty much it. So just check the size, which, yep, that's about right. So then I just click on start. Right, and here is our finished press. So what I did there is I ran that 3 times through the laser to get the depth it is at the moment. And I think that's probably, I don't know, about 1.5 mil, but hopefully you can kind of see the sort of depth I've gone for there. And it's better, I think, with certain materials to do more than one pass than it is to just up your power and do it in one, because the laser is, you know, it's a heated element, and it's gonna, if you go too slow, too hot, you'll just burn your surface. So yeah, I'd rather do it in sort of slower passes and get much sort of sharper finish. But I put a little hinge on it just because it's easier to then just keep it. Well, you don't have to worry about it wobbling around, but you can see that's a pretty rudimentary job. But I'm only sort of doing, or I've only sort of made this one for the purposes of a video, so I'll probably chuck it out after. But if it was something you were going to mass produce, do a better job than that, eh? So anyway, let's just bring the camera down and I'll show you the metal. So what I've got here is a roll of copper. It's relatively thin. There's a sort of dull side, but you can cut this with scissors. And although that might seem like that's pretty flimsy, once you've actually embossed it, that does strengthen it. So, you know, once it's done and then you glue it to whatever surface you're going to have it on, yeah, it will be pretty firm. So I'm just going to do this a little bit bigger than it needs to be so it sticks out. And then the only thing to remember is the side that it's going to be facing up. So let's say dull side, shiny side. I'm going shiny side up, so on there. Pop that in there. Then bring the camera over here. And then all I'm going to do is put it in a vise. And I'm going to work my way down, just applying a fair amount of pressure. And just bring it up. Then lock it down again. And so on. You know, if you haven't got a vise, G-clamps will do it, you know, just something that's going to be able to apply a decent amount of pressure and quite evenly. So, you know, a few G-clamps on it would do the trick. If you were thinking you wanted to do something a lot bigger, and you're like, God, I'm not going to be running a like 2-foot plank through a vise, you know, there's always other ways you could do it. I reckon if you like, you could drive your car over it. If you put it off a curb or something like that, So I'm just going to go over this a couple of times because there's some quite intricate details in terms of like the word original at the top. I want to make sure those tiny little bits get into all the letters. So I'm just going to run this through a couple of times. That should do you. Right, let's have a look. And there you go. Whoa. Pick that up. So there, that's got all the nice sort of detail in the word original. Yeah, I think it looks really nice. And although you're going to get a bit of grub on it, a bit of Brasso will polish that up nice. So what I'll do now is just trim the edges, mount it on a bit of wood, give it a polish, and then you can see what it looks like as a sort of finished piece. And here's the finished sign. So although the video is quite long for this, once you've got the hang of the digital process, it's really quick thing to do. You know, it's only going to take a few minutes to set up each template. A couple of things which I should mention at the end. I do these as one-off, so I'm just making one and then probably discarding it. But if you're going to mass produce something, I'd probably go with the oak or the mahogany for your template rather than the MDF. MDF's perfect for one or two, but it is going to weaken over time getting squashed in the vise. So that's number one. Second one, I think this would have looked nicer with a sort of stroke border around it. And with that, I think that would have stopped these kind of sort of creases on the edges. So just something to trial. You know, this is all trial and error for me as well. So I've just sort of figured this out. Thought I'd share it with you guys, but I'm sure you'll pick this up, run with it, and then sort of figure out loads better stuff than what I've covered in this video. Well, I hope so anyway. And I hope you enjoyed the video. And if you did, please subscribe to the channel and click the little thumbs up icon. And please share the video with anyone else who you think might enjoy it. So until next time, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, cheers.